You have been studying wrong throughout your entire life, and this video may be the most important video you watch this year, because I'm here to give you the 9 biggest habits that took me from studying 12 hours a day and then constantly feeling behind to then scoring in the top percentile, transferring to med school through one of the UK's most competitive programs, and then doing it all without selling my life to studies. The biggest issue you have in your brain is that you think of studying as a chore, as a burden that you have to force yourself through. I've got to get through this lecture, finish 3 chapters, 50 flashcards. Stop and go blank. Literally clear everything out of your head before starting a topic and only think about one question. What is the smartest way to understand it? And for me, just that one question, whenever I ask it, whenever I'm at a low point of, I don't want to do this, I'm tired, instantly flips everything. Because now, instead of just reading, I have something to solve. Okay, I have this topic in front of me, I have 45 minutes. What can I do to figure out exactly how this topic works? What I'll do is I'll probably skim through it, look at the structure, see what's important, decide how am I gonna organize this information in my brain. We'll talk about how we do that later, but thinking like that with a problem-solving mindset, that is how I've been able to improve the way I learn for the last 7 years. I get asked about what I've accomplished and how I've done it every day, and that is the answer. When you stop passively just doing the work because you have to, studying because you have to, because of your parents, your exams, whatever, your uni, and instead actually take control behind the process of your studying. If you do that, you won't need motivation, because then you're the one who's in control. You're the one coming up with the game plan, the tactics of how you're going to tackle it the smartest way possible. You're not just stuck inside of some long chapter reading along. And suddenly you want to keep going because it's your mission. Not because someone told you to do it, but because it's your job to solve the puzzle. So don't study just to finish the work. Don't study to feel productive. Study to figure it out and make it your own process. That's honestly how learning starts to feel fun again. Second, forget the, I don't know what to study, I don't know where to start, because it's BS. And I'll tell you exactly how to start so you never feel like procrastinating again. Because let's be real, it's not a motivation problem. It is a technique problem. All of you start by just opening up your book and reading line by line every single word, trying to understand it, force understanding. You're not gonna get it, you're gonna get stuck, and then you're gonna go on your phone. And that is why you would hate to start the next time you come to study, because your version of studying is way too hard and doesn't accomplish anything. So here's what you do instead, and I've been doing this for the last 7+ years to make starting as easy as humanly possible. I start every single topic by skimming it for 5 to 10 minutes, only reading the basics of the chapter and ignoring everything that I don't understand. By basics, I mean reading the headings, what the main concepts are, and what the topic is generally about. That's it. You don't even have to understand it properly yet, because that small step, getting the big overview of it, is what removes that initial resistance you feel before starting a topic. You'll get the big overview of what you're about to read through, it'll feel less overwhelming, it'll be easier to understand for you because you have that big overview, a base for your brain, and then it'll be easier to actually learn. Habit number 3, when you're studying a topic, your goal should be to only have to study it once. Understand it perfectly, and then never have to go through it again. That is how easy you should make it for your brain to understand and take in the information. And the way you do so is by splitting up the reading you're doing into passes, where the first pass of the topic was just focusing on the basics, the 5 to 10 minutes of skimming that we already did, ignoring everything else. Then the second pass of you studying this topic is you looking at the general concepts, only looking at the things that you can easily understand. And if you come across a detail or a specific fact or an idea that you're like, I don't know about this one, let's see, maybe do I need to look something up? Forget it, skip it, no hesitation. And because you did that, when you do the third pass of the material, the content, the hard content that you didn't understand, clicks like this. It actually lands. Because now you actually have something in your brain to attach this niche detail to. You see, I'm never forcing myself to understand something that my brain isn't naturally ready to understand, which then keeps me in flow and gives me so much confidence when I'm studying, because there's never a moment where I don't actually understand something. This is the layering method in action. And once you've experienced how it feels like to study this way, to study in those passes, you will never go back to studying any other way. Also, if you're serious about learning smarter and want the actual practical advice that I would give to the people to improve the way you learn week by week, the exact resources that I don't always have the time to share on YouTube, then sign up to my free email newsletter below, Study Scoop, linked in the description. It's highly practical, it's short, literally the practical actions are right at the top of the email. And yeah, what are you waiting for? This is how you get better at learning very quickly. Number 4. Most of you study one topic at a time. Big mistake and big time waster. Instead, learn 3 related topics side by side. I know I might sound insane right now, but when you learn 3 to 4 topics together, for example, the spinal conditions, if you learn them together, you start comparing between them. These 2 conditions, ankylosing spondylitis, discitis, have autoimmune inflammation type of causes, whereas these 2, disc prolapse and stenosis, have more of a mechanical cause. This one hurts more if you bend over, and this one hurts more on extension. And it is that comparison between the different topics that forces you to learn the information without even trying. You don't need to cover the textbook with your hand and then try and memorize it right there. None of that. Because you comparing between the 2 diseases is you learning. The second you compare 2 pieces of information, you have related them in your brain and they start to stick. And isn't that amazing? It took me so long to try and figure out what exactly to do in order to learn the fastest ways possible. This is it. Regardless of what level of learning you're at, you can do this. And by the way, continue to study in those passes that we discussed, except do it for all 3 topics. All the basics of 3 topics, compare between them. All of the general concepts between them, compare as much as you possibly can. I understand some topics are different, but it's still possible. And then compare between any of the details and the facts as much as you can. But if you're studying and can't grasp exactly the concept that you're reading about, despite using all the techniques that we've discussed, the way you clarify your doubts is by asking smart questions. But instead of using Google articles or trying to find verified information through ChatGPT summaries, go on something like Consensus AI, ask the specific questions that you have, and get the exact answers that you're looking for directly from scientific articles and research papers. I would recommend tools like this to students to use when you're studying, especially for medical students and doctors. For example, when I was studying the basic treatments of retinal artery occlusion, instead of just memorizing a list of steps in a textbook, I wanted to know why those steps even exist, what the actual scientific basis was behind them, because that is something that would help me with my understanding and with comparing it to other diseases as well, remembering it better. So let me show you how I did that on Consensus. I searched up the specific treatment studies behind the retinal artery occlusion treatment pathway that we have here, and I can immediately see the reasoning laid out, combined from the best research studies that they have on the topic, including the conclusions. I'll show you the conclusions, the data, the findings. All of it just made understanding and then remembering this a lot easier. It's such an excellent tool that gives you the specific scientific insights, the research behind all of the things that you're studying. You can use it for your essays. I used it for my dissertation as well. So if you're curious and want to try using the tool for yourself, click the link in the description and use the code ZAIN40, ZAIN 40 at checkout to get a massive 40% off the premium subscription for 2 years. So if you are interested, if you do a lot of research, if you write essays, if you have to study a lot of scientific information, this is a tool that I just highly would recommend. Regardless, check it out. Habit number 5 is for all of you that complain to me about not being able to focus on a daily basis. Most of you think you have a focus problem, when the reality is you have a location problem. If there's one reason that I'm able to get so much done, even during the busiest weeks of medical school, it's because I've built a routine that makes progress inevitable for me. Because every day after all my classes, my placement, everything ends, I don't go home. I go to the hospital library or wherever I am. I find a cafe, I just sit down outside of where I live and start to work. Not because I'm in the mood, not because I don't want to go home and chill, but because that is the routine. Because if I go home or just stay at home, I eat, I scroll, I'll convince myself, oh, I'll start in 10 minutes. I don't. Because honestly, it's too hard. So I don't even let that become an option. And here's the magic. Because I've been doing this consistent routine of staying back after school, after work, consistently for years now, I get 3 to 4 hours of high effort, focused work done every single day after everyone else goes home. I'm improving my knowledge. I'm writing scripts. I'm coaching students. I'm trying to build something meaningful, all while in medical school. And the reason all of this is possible is because I just show up and do the work. And because I stay back, I've just showed up, and the environment, it does all the rest of the work. It's the environment that triggers that locked in, focused version of me that you wouldn't find at home. The one who's not tired, not distracted, not debating whether to work or not to work. So if you're struggling to actually stay consistent right now, stop asking, how do I get motivated? Ask, what routine would the person that I want to become follow every single day? Even better, actually, ask yourself, how can I change the environment to make work the only option possible? Because if your location is right, work isn't like a grind anymore. It feels natural. But habit 6, let's be real, even if you know how to work, if you know where to work, most of you never have planned the actual work that you're going to do. Or as a matter of fact, how your day is going to look, how your life is going to be lived. None of it. Time management is not in anyone's books. And so this is the simple two-step way that I've sorted my time management out for years now. Step 1, use a Google Calendar. Open it up and throw all of your tasks on there for the week. No huge to-do lists, just throw the tasks on the actual calendar. You just need to add these tasks to the days you think you actually do them. Don't need to be stretched out, color-coded, nothing. And the reason this is better than having a huge to-do list is because the rest of your week's schedule, the classes, the actual events that you have planned, everything is already on there. So you can't just throw a billion tasks on your calendar. You kind of have to fit it between each of your classes or after them, and you actually have a gauge of how many hours you have in a day. And then step 2, each night, open up your calendar and then stretch out the tasks that are already on that day to fit in the time blocks that you already have. Just time block the next day, nothing else. I only really plan the next day out perfectly, because if I do it for the whole week, I'm never gonna follow it. I'm gonna fall behind, something's gonna come up, and that's it. Now when I wake up, I know exactly where my focus needs to go. There's no guilt, there's no wondering, there's no energy wasted. Just a day with direction that I chose. But one important thing to remember is to treat this calendar as a guide. You don't need to follow every single split second of it. Obviously, ideally if you do, it's amazing, but it's not your dad. You don't have to listen to it. If something comes up, if you want to change things around, do so. It is just a guide that you've suggested for yourself that you probably should follow if you have nothing better to be doing. Habit number 7. Everyone just says do more questions. So that's what you and I keep doing, right? We do hundreds of questions, we spam flashcards, and then wonder why nothing is clicking. And yes, you need questions. Yes, they're effective. But if questions is all you do, start to finish, then you'll just be sitting there all day doing them. And by the way, not learning much while you're at it. And that's not really what we want, right? On this channel, our goal isn't just to grind endlessly. We're here to learn faster, remember more, get better at doing exams, ace them easily, so that we have the time, the energy, and the drive to actually do the things, the other things in our life that we want to. And the way you're gonna do that is not by spamming questions. Because think about what you're doing there without any background learning. You're just throwing random facts at your brain, hoping that you catch something. And obviously that's not gonna work. So the way you actually learn efficiently is by building the foundation first. Like we've talked about this entire time, we want to make sure that your brain knows the shape of the topic before you test it. Habit number 8, by creating a single mind map for multiple related topics. Not the aesthetic Pinterest mind maps that you're probably thinking about, because when I say mind map, what I mean is the skeletal model of all 3 to 4 topics that you've covered, laid out on a single page. A structure for all the topics that will stick in your brain and help you remember it forever. Well, a bit of an exaggeration, but here's what it looks like in action. If I'm studying the 4 spinal diseases that we discussed earlier, instead of spamming 150 questions on them, I studied all 4 of them at the same time as we discussed and read through their material in passes, basics first, general concepts second, and details last. And while I did this, I thought about and wrote down what specifically links all of these conditions together. Yes, they affect the spine, but what else? What is similar or different between them? Stenosis versus prolapse, ankylosing spondylitis versus ischitis. What is similar in how they work, how they're treated, all of that. Because doing this exercise of comparison will help you think about what your mind map will look like. And as I've taught in my many mind mapping videos, you start with the center of it and then build outwards. All of it based on the connections that you find. And as I've shown you multiple times, this is what it looked like at the end of it. But as you can see, when it's all on one page, the differences between the topics become anchors in my memory. And because all of the information I learned was in pursuit of creating this mind map, because the process of creating this mind map was so effective, it helped me learn the entire basis of all 4 topics. Now, when I do the questions, when I do the lectures, all of that knowledge has somewhere to go in my head. This actual structure is what I'll be relating it all to. If you're still new to mind mapping, I'll link a video in the description below and here as well. But the takeaway is simple. Build the actual model of what you're about to learn first, then practice. Habit number 9, let me get this clear. When I've said you need to build a mind map, what I don't mean is that you need to understand the topic perfectly, learn every single bit of it, and then make the mind map. That's the trap. I don't wait until I've learned everything in order to build this. It's not super useful then. I build this so that I can understand everything in the first place. Honestly, the first months of mind maps that I made were terrible. They were so bad. I remember they were just filled with information. I can't actually recall any of them now. And back when I made them, I probably made videos on it showing you how good they were. But with every repetition of doing this, figuring out better ways of visually representing the information that I'm learning to make it hyper memorable, relating the topics together. Think about how all of it is going to lay out on a page. I know it probably seems daunting, but that process of repetition of doing this again and again is what forces your brain to get better. So don't wait around until you know how to do the mind mapping method perfectly. Don't even wait for the actual topic to make sense. Just start, even if it's tough. This doesn't just apply to the mind mapping, it applies to any habit that you've learned today. Because clarity comes while you take action, while you create, not before. And that is how real progress works. If you made it this far, you already know that these habits weren't just tips. These were the real techniques and systems that I've learned over the years that rebuilt how I learn and how I live. And now it's your turn. What will you actually take away from this video? Because watching this was all good and well, but what is actually going to be the actionable thing that you take away and implement today? And by the way, if you watched this far, what are you doing? Subscribe. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, spam the comments, do the usual stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.